Now we're going to discuss the positive and negative parts of a graph. Remember, we talked about this being similar to the Georgia-Florida line. So Georgia is the area that's above the x-axis, and Florida is the area that's below. And the x-axis itself is the line that divides them. So we want to identify which parts of the graph lie above the x-axis in the positive area and which ones lie below, and the dividing point is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. We'll write these using interval notation. Sometimes the entire graph will be completely above or below, and then you'll write none if there's no negative interval or if there's no negative or positive, excuse me. So if we look at this first graph, we see that the asymptote is actually at y equals 0. And y equals 0 is also the x-axis. So this graph never crosses the x-axis. The entire graph is in the positive area of the graph. None of it is in the negative area. So the entire thing from negative infinity to positive infinity is in the positive zone of the graph above the x-axis, and none is in the negative area. On the next one, so I'm gonna, let's see, here's my x-axis. So this part of the graph is above the x-axis, and then this part of the graph is below the x-axis, and where it crosses is at -1. So from negative infinity to this point here at -1, the graph is positive. So from negative infinity to -1, the graph is in the positive area. And then from the positive, from -1 all the way over here to positive infinity, this whole section of the graph is below the x-axis in the negative zone. So from -1 to infinity is negative. Let's look at another example. Here, here's my x-axis. Here's where the graph crosses. So this side of the graph is below, like in Florida. This part's in Florida, and that's from negative infinity to here where x equals 0. So nope, not positive, excuse me, that's the negative. So from negative infinity to 0, the graph is in the negative zone. And then this section of the graph is in the positive part above the x-axis, and that is happening again from this point at 0 all the way over here to positive infinity. So the positive part of the graph is from -1 to positive infinity. Last one. Here's our x-axis, and here's where the graph crosses the x-axis. That's a little tricky because it's not an integer, but we'll just give an estimate. And the positive part is here where it's above, and the negative part is here where it's below. So now from left to right, here's negative infinity. From negative infinity to this point here, let's see if it's 1 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll just call it 1.5. So from negative infinity to 1.5, it's in the negative y values of the graph. So from negative infinity to 1.5, and then this part here is in the positive, and that goes from positive 1.5 to positive infinity.